My ex-wife's boyfriend stole my Lego collection, so I sued him and got him sent to jail. Now they're furious, and I'm wondering if I'm the a-hole. I'm a 35-year-old guy, and I've always had a soft spot for Legos. Everything from the basic sets to the big, themed ones that come with complicated manuals. Ever since I was a kid, I found building them soothing. My father once gave me a classic set for my 8th birthday, and that's what started my passion. Over the years, I've accumulated a sizable collection, carefully boxed and stored in my garage. Some folks collect baseball cards. I collect tiny plastic bricks. It might sound childish to some, but it's always been my thing. A couple of years back, I went through a rough divorce. My ex-wife and I just couldn't see eye to eye anymore. We parted on civil terms, or so I thought. We split our assets, figured out living arrangements, and basically wished each other well. She soon started dating someone else, a guy who seemed harmless enough at first glance. I honestly had no interest in the details of her new relationship. I hoped she'd be happier, and I was ready to move forward with my own life. Little did I know that this new boyfriend would eventually turn my world upside down. It started innocently enough. One afternoon, my ex-wife called me out of the blue. I figured it might be something about leftover paperwork or a stray box of clothes I'd accidentally taken. Instead, she asked if she could store a couple of personal items in my garage for a short time. I had no problem with that. We weren't close friends or anything, but we were on passably good terms, and I had extra space in the garage. I agreed, told her just to let me know when she'd swing by. She thanked me and said it wouldn't be a big deal, just a few boxes. The next week, she dropped by with her boyfriend, carrying some dusty containers marked kitchen, books, and pictures. I pointed out a safe spot near a table saw I rarely used and told him to stack the boxes there. That was when I noticed the boyfriend eyeing my Lego shelves with that curious smirk on his face. He casually asked, "Hey, you collect these?" I nodded, half smiling, not thinking much of it. He muttered something about how he used to have a few sets as a kid. I shrugged and replied that I'd been collecting for years. He whistled. "That's quite a collection. Must be worth something, huh?" I nodded again, acknowledging that some of the rarer sets can be valuable to enthusiasts. A couple of days later, I got a text from my ex-wife. "Hey, can we come by to grab another box?" I was busy at work, so I told her the door to the garage would be unlocked and they could help themselves. I didn't think about it twice. She'd lived there before, and I assumed it wouldn't be a problem. I was juggling my job at a small construction firm and trying to meet a deadline, so I didn't have the bandwidth to babysit anyone rummaging in my garage. When I got home that evening, nothing seemed amiss at first glance. The boxes they had dropped off were still in the same spot, minus one. I shrugged and went on with my normal routine, heated up leftovers, watched a little TV, and went to bed. The next day, a Saturday, I had some extra time in the morning. I went to the garage to tinker around, maybe organize some shelves. That's when I realized something was off. Several of my Lego boxes, those that I kept in pristine condition, were gone. Not just shifted or rearranged, but vanished. My heart pounded. At first, I wondered if I was losing my mind. Did I move them somewhere? Had I lent them to a friend? Then it clicked. The only people who had been in my garage recently were my ex-wife and her boyfriend. My pulse quickened, and I immediately grabbed my phone to call her. She took forever to answer, and when she finally did, she sounded annoyed. "Hey, did you or your boyfriend move any of my Lego sets?" I asked as calmly as I could. She paused, then said, "What are you talking about?" I told her some of my valuable sets were missing, and her voice turned defensive. "We didn't touch anything. Maybe you misplaced them." The pit in my stomach grew. I knew exactly where those sets had been. I told her I wasn't accusing them outright, but asked if the boyfriend might have taken them by mistake or borrowed them for some reason. She blew up at me, saying, "I'm not your keeper. Don't blame us for your forgetfulness," and hung up. I stood there in the garage, staring at the empty spaces where my sets should have been. Some of those were collector's items, limited runs and old sets from my childhood I'd painstakingly reacquired over time. The monetary value was one thing, but the sentimental value was priceless. Anger and confusion swirled in my head. I was certain that nobody else had even stepped foot in my garage besides them. Yet my ex-wife acted like I was the bad guy for asking questions. I called a friend to vent. He suggested I check local pawn shops or online marketplaces to see if any of my sets had been listed. That idea lit a fire under me. I hopped online, scrolled through local listings, typed in the names of my rarer sets. Sure enough, I found 2 sets that looked exactly like mine being advertised at a suspiciously low price. The seller's location was only a couple of towns over, which made my stomach twist. I sent the links to my friend, and he agreed it was too much of a coincidence. My next step was obvious. I reached out to the seller, acting like a potential buyer. They responded quickly with a phone number. We texted back and forth, and I asked if I could see the sets in person. The person insisted on meeting in a neutral spot, a grocery store parking lot. At that moment, I had a feeling that this was, without a doubt, my stolen property. I told him I'd confirm a time after I checked my schedule. But before I tried any do-it-yourself sting operation, I decided to talk to the police. I explained that I believed my Lego sets were stolen and likely being sold online. They told me to gather any proof I had, photos of my original collection, serial numbers if available, or unique identifying details. Luckily, I'd taken pictures of some of my sets over the years. I even had a log of purchase dates and references because a few were quite expensive. The officer I spoke to said, "If you can confirm these are definitely your items, we can help. But let's proceed carefully." That was enough to get me rolling. I was furious, but also determined. If my ex-wife's boyfriend really stole my Lego collection, he wasn't going to get away with it. I contacted my ex-wife again, trying to stay calm. "Listen, I'm giving you one more chance to come clean. I've seen 2 of my sets for sale online, and I know they're mine." She sounded irritated, claiming I was harassing her. She repeated she had no clue what I was talking about. Frustrated, I said, "If that's how you want to play it, fine. But you better tell your boyfriend that the police are getting involved." She scoffed, telling me I was overreacting. Then she hung up again. It felt surreal. This woman and I had parted ways without major fights, and yet here I was, preparing to press charges involving her new partner. But I couldn't ignore reality. My property was stolen, and I had evidence. I texted that same friend who'd suggested checking the online listings, letting him know the police might help with a controlled meetup. He offered to come with me if I needed backup, but I told him I wanted to see how the authorities wanted to handle it first. I returned to the station with a folder of pictures, some receipts, and notes on exactly which sets were missing. An officer helped me compare the online listing photos to my reference pics. One set had a small paint smudge on the corner of the box, something I'd accidentally spilled during a garage project a couple of years back. It matched perfectly. This was more than enough reason for suspicion. The officer proposed we set up a meeting with the seller while they monitored from a distance. With that plan in place, I messaged the seller saying I was ready to meet that upcoming Saturday morning. The time and place were agreed upon, a grocery store parking lot in a nearby town. I arrived 15 minutes early, parked in a corner, and spotted 2 unmarked police cars tucked away behind some dumpsters. My adrenaline was pumping. I half expected the seller to bail, but then a beat-up truck pulled in. A man hopped out, and sure enough, it was my ex-wife's boyfriend. My jaw clenched. He opened the truck's tailgate, revealing 2 Lego boxes that matched the online listing. I recognized them on sight. I stepped forward, acting casual, and said, "So these are the sets, huh?" He nodded, not realizing who I was under my baseball cap and sunglasses. "They're brand new," he boasted. "I'm letting them go cheap because I need quick cash." My blood boiled at how brazen he was. Before the conversation could go any further, 2 officers approached. "Police," one said, showing a badge. The boyfriend's eyes went wide, and he stammered, "What's happening?" I lifted my cap just enough for him to see my face clearly. He turned pale. The officers asked him for identification. Then they took the Lego boxes in hand, comparing them to the pictures I'd provided. It didn't take long for them to piece things together. Right there in a parking lot, they detained him for suspicion of possessing stolen property. He blurted out something about how I'd agreed to let him take a few sets, which was a blatant lie. My stomach turned at how easily he tried to spin it. The officers read him his rights, and he was placed under arrest. I watched in a daze, a mixture of rage and vindication swirling in my head. This guy had waltzed into my garage, stolen items I cherished, and tried to flip them for quick money. Now he was in handcuffs. After the police cleared the scene, one of the officers patted me on the shoulder. "We'll be in touch," he said. They took the boyfriend to the station, and I followed to give a more detailed statement. It was a whirlwind of paperwork. The officers asked me how I recognized him, and I explained who he was in relation to my ex-wife, how they recently had access to my garage, and the specific items I noticed missing. From there, the case proceeded. Sure enough, in his truck, the police found other boxes that I strongly suspected were also mine, different Lego sets I hadn't seen listed yet. That solidified the case for felony theft, given the total combined value of these sets. I told the officers about the entire collection, how I'd been building it for years, how some sets were worth hundreds of dollars each, maybe even thousands if you counted everything. They were quite surprised at how valuable Lego could be, but they took it seriously once they confirmed the market prices. That night, I tried calling my ex-wife again, demanding an explanation. She didn't pick up. Instead, she sent a text. "You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy." There was no apology, no acknowledgement that her boyfriend had blatantly stolen from me. I shook my head, wondering how she could be so blind or just so indifferent. Maybe she was furious that I'd had him arrested. Maybe she believed his nonsense story. Either way, it was clear that I'd shattered whatever semblance of civility remained between us. As days turned into weeks, I got more and more details from the police. The boyfriend was being charged with possession of stolen property and burglary. He'd entered my garage without permission to take additional sets. My ex-wife insisted to me via a hostile phone call that I was exaggerating the value of the Legos just to get him in trouble. When I tried to calmly explain that I had receipts and valuations for many of them, she slammed the phone down. The sense of betrayal sank deeper. We were never best friends after the divorce, but I never imagined she'd side with someone who outright looted my property. Meanwhile, my father, upon hearing the story, told me I did the right thing. He reminded me that sometimes people need to face the legal consequences to learn they can't just walk all over others. In my father's words, you can't let thieves push you around, even if they're connected to family by marriage. That gave me a bit of peace. I still felt unsettled about the situation, but I knew I had to see it through. As the legal process moved forward, my ex-wife's boyfriend hired a defense attorney who tried to spin a story about misunderstanding or a setup. They claimed I'd actually lent him the sets and then ambushed him. But the paper trail of messages, plus the police's own observations, told a different story. Not to mention, he'd been caught red-handed trying to sell them. The prosecutors seemed pretty confident in the case. We had clear evidence, including my ownership records and photos. Plus, the location data from the marketplace listing matched his account. It was cut and dry. I got subpoenaed to testify in a preliminary hearing. The tension built as I walked into that courtroom. My ex-wife was there, sitting in the back, arms folded, glaring at me like I committed a crime against her. I tried to avoid her gaze. When I took the stand, the prosecutor asked me a series of questions. How long I'd collected Legos, how I stored them, who had access to my garage, and how I identified the stolen sets. I answered steadily, though I was nervous. The defense attorney attempted to poke holes. Are you sure you never said he could borrow anything? Did you actually see him take them? But I stood my ground, explaining that I'd never consented to any such arrangement and that the police found them in his truck. The judge seemed unmoved by the defense's attempts at sowing doubt. Outside the courtroom, my ex-wife confronted me. "This is insane," she hissed. "You're destroying an innocent man's life over plastic toys." I shot back, "He stole thousands of dollars of my property. You call that innocent?" She rolled her eyes and stormed off. I felt a pang of regret that things had come to this, but no matter how I twisted it, the boyfriend was the one who crossed the line. A couple of weeks later, an official letter arrived, listing the charges he would face in a formal trial. Among them was felony theft, given the combined value of the Legos, and burglary for entering my property. It also mentioned the possibility of additional charges if he'd tried to sell stolen goods across state lines. Apparently, he had posted some sets for shipping. My ex-wife continued to fume about it. She left me a series of voicemails, calling me vindictive and heartless. One message included a line about how the judge will see through your lies. I deleted them all without replying. I'd had enough of her hostility. Meanwhile, I decided to pursue a separate civil claim for damages. Not only had I lost some sets forever, he'd already sold a few by the time the police caught him, but I'd suffered monetary losses in shipping and handling fees I'd spent on reacquiring sets from other collectors, plus the emotional toll of losing part of my prize collection. My attorney explained that we could file a civil lawsuit, independent of the criminal case, to recoup the value of what was taken. I hesitated initially, unsure if I wanted to spend more time and money in legal battles. But then I remembered the ex-wife's boyfriend smugly trying to flip my sets online. My anger fueled me. I decided I deserved compensation. So we went ahead and filed the civil suit. The boyfriend's attorney tried to scare me off, saying I'd have to prove the exact values and that old toys aren't worth as much as I claimed. My attorney calmly pointed out that LEGO collectors' markets often track sets' resale value with meticulous detail. I had screenshots from online marketplaces, plus receipts from my own purchases. We put together a tight case. As the trial date in the criminal case approached, I realized how determined I was to see justice served. My ex-wife's boyfriend had shown zero remorse. His attitude was that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But to me, it wasn't just about the bricks. It was the principle that you can't just break into someone's personal space and steal what's valuable to them, sentimentally or monetarily, and then whine when you get caught. When the day came, the courtroom was a cauldron of tension. The prosecutor laid out the facts: the stolen sets, the online sale, the police sting, my photographic evidence, everything. The defense tried to paint me as an obsessive collector who invited trouble, but the jury didn't seem convinced. Eventually, the boyfriend took the stand in his own defense, offering a rambling story about how he thought my ex-wife had said I was letting them have the sets. The prosecutor quickly questioned why he was selling them if he believed they were gifts. He stuttered, couldn't give a coherent answer, and ended up looking foolish. By the end of the trial, the evidence was overwhelming. The jury returned a guilty verdict on felony theft. Because he had a prior record, unknown to me at the time, for a different property crime, the judge handed down a jail sentence. My ex-wife turned red with anger, staring daggers at me as they escorted her boyfriend away. I walked out of that courtroom feeling an odd mix of triumph and sorrow. It was never my intention to see someone land in jail, but he brought this on himself. The fallout was immediate. I started getting phone calls from mutual acquaintances, people who heard about the case through the grapevine. Some asked if I was okay. Others implied I was petty for sending someone to jail over Legos. I calmly explained that no one forced him to steal from me. He chose to do it, and the law took its course. A few even apologized for doubting me once they learned the facts. But I knew that from my ex-wife's perspective, I was now the enemy for humiliating them in court. After the conviction, my civil case moved forward. The boyfriend, now behind bars, still had an attorney representing him. They tried to settle out of court, offering a fraction of the total value. I refused. My attorney and I demanded the full estimated worth plus additional damages, given how many sets were missing or irreparably lost. Ultimately, they had little leverage. The judge in the civil case reviewed my documentation, purchase receipts, valuations from collector sites, and even statements from other collectors verifying these sets' rarity. It was clear I wasn't inflating numbers. Shortly before the scheduled hearing, they capitulated and agreed to pay a settlement equal to the fair value of my stolen sets. It didn't magically restore all the sentiment I'd lost, nor did it bring back the sets he'd already sold off. But it was something. The court approved a payment plan, with part of his wages garnished once he got out of jail. I signed the papers, feeling a sense of closure. Even if I never recovered a few of those special Lego sets, I had done my best to stand up for myself. Unsurprisingly, my ex-wife was livid. She left me one final voicemail: "You've ruined his life, and you're taking money he can't afford to pay. I hope you feel good about yourself." I blocked her number afterward, deciding I didn't need that kind of negativity. From what I heard through the rumor mill, she was still claiming I'd blown the entire situation out of proportion. But the truth was simple: her boyfriend stole from me, got caught, and now had to face the consequences. I wasn't going to lose sleep over it. In the weeks following, I tried to rebuild my collection, though some sets were gone for good. Other collectors reached out when they heard the story, offering to sell me certain sets at a discount just to help me restore my stash. It was heartwarming, seeing total strangers empathize with how important these pieces were to me. Friends asked if I regretted pressing charges, but I always said no. Theft is theft. He walked into my space, took what wasn't his, and tried to profit from it. If there's a line in the sand, that's definitely it. Life slowly returned to a new normal. I upgraded my garage security, installing cameras and a better lock system. I made sure only close friends and trusted family members ever had access. My father came by one afternoon, scanning the reorganized shelves. He asked if I had any second thoughts. I shrugged and answered, I did what I had to do. He nodded, putting a supportive hand on my shoulder. You can't let people step all over you, he said, especially when they think they can take advantage of your goodwill. Looking back, I see how one small act, letting my ex-wife store boxes in my garage, led to a full-blown legal saga. But I also see how it revealed people's true colors. The boyfriend's sense of entitlement was staggering. He assumed I'd just roll over when my property vanished. Even my ex-wife, who once shared a life with me, showed no sympathy for the violation of my personal space. Maybe it was bitterness or loyalty to her new partner. Either way, it made me realize she and I were never going to have an amicable post-divorce relationship. And that's okay. At the end of it all, I sometimes wonder if I'm the bad guy in their eyes. Maybe so. But from my perspective, I only defended what was mine against someone who felt justified in stealing it. If that makes me the bad guy to them, then so be it. I'll sleep just fine knowing I stood up for myself. So that's how I ended up suing my ex-wife's boyfriend for swiping my Lego collection, and it led to him going to jail. Now they're both furious, and I'm left questioning if I'm the villain in this story. But I believe there's a clear difference between petty vengeance and rightful justice, and what I did fell on the side of justice. Some might scoff at pressing charges over plastic bricks, but to me, those sets represented cherished memories and hard-earned money. I drew the line, took the matter to court, and refused to let a thief walk away scot-free. I've learned that boundaries matter, and sometimes upholding them requires tough actions. It's unfortunate that someone landed behind bars, but when you commit a crime, that's the risk you take. In the end, I'm determined not to feel guilty for protecting what I hold dear. If the price of standing up for myself is being labeled the antagonist in someone else's narrative, I can live with that. At least my conscience and my collection are a little more secure now.